Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. In today's webinar, we are going to talk about mobile app and specifically SDKs. I feel this year has been a year of, focused by regulators on different technologies, and has been surfaced as a big one. So that is something we definitely want to dig in. Often, while websites are easy to audit for privacy teams, and you kind of understand what a cookie is, what a pixel is, mobile app seems like a wild west. It's not something you can audit clearly. The SDKs themselves are not fully transparent on what data they collect. So it's a little tough place for privacy teams to actually get visibility and then mitigate risk. So that is something that we're definitely going to work on. So let's get the webinar started. Hi everyone, I'm Vaibhav. I also go by V. I'm the founder and CEO of Privado.ai. Um, that voice should have been back. Yeah, and I am a CIPM certified privacy professional. Before starting Privado, I was actually working in the product space, so working with engineers in the B2C company on mobile app, website, backend systems. So, I've seen how some product and engineering decisions can impact privacy, some on the design side, like what you're trying to build, but a lot of times it is the choice that an engineer can make on the SDK they pick and the corresponding privacy risk it brings in. So those are some things that we're going to touch today. But before we begin the webinar, some uh, housekeeping items. First of all, the webinar is being recorded, which means you'll get the recording afterwards. Feel free to share it within your team and to your friends. There is a Q&A tab. You must be seeing at the bottom of your Zoom screens. Feel free to use that and put any questions there. And this is also a good reminder for me to uh, plug my laptop. I see it's running out of battery, so just give me 1 minute and I'll be doing that. All right. Thanks everyone for waiting. And we can get started. Uh, Perfect. Cool. Perfect. So on agenda today, we're going to do a little bit of detour to begin with and start with the state of website privacy. That's kind of a report our team did looking at top 100 websites in US and Europe and we created some benchmarks, KPIs. That's something that we are going to look at. We're going to dig deep into what the regulation and trends are from enforcement or guidance in US and Europe for mobile app. We'll take some non-compliance examples. Again, the context is not to pick on specific companies, but to learn from them. Finally, we'll go into the depth of what SDKs are, what SDK governance means, what are the mobile app privacy risks that you can audit today in your company on your apps, and then move to a Privado solution on how we can solve it for you. Um, I also have a fun game that I'm going to audit live on the webinar today. So hopefully that goes well. And yeah, with that, we'll see some results as well. So before I start, I thought this conversation kind of summarize what our state of privacy report, is going to reveal. So yeah, famous character learns about cookies on the consumer side. So these are people, for whom the privacy teams work and, kind of what we're trying to, achieve as well. So what Privado did is basically we took 100 websites from US and Europe, and we created a benchmark on, hey, how many of these websites actually comply with laws, right? Like actually are GDPR compliant or CPRA compliant from a perspective of cookies, trackers, consent banners, and so on. In privacy, there is a constant complaint that there is a lack of benchmarks and KPIs. And we thought if we create one that can motivate everyone to cross collaborate, right? Marketing team, technology team, privacy team, all working together to actually give your users an experience which is safer, which is privacy first, which is compliant. So here are some findings from that. So first of all, like it is a little surprising even for us, but almost 70% plus 76 in Europe, US 74 in Europe. do not actually comply fully with the law, which means, if someone comes on the website while there is a banner on all these websites, they either are in US, they don't honor the GPC signal. In Europe, they do not, I mean, the banner doesn't work. You can click on reject and it still will drop the cookies or fire the pixels. The second insight was again very high, 75% in US. If you look at these websites are sharing data with advertising third parties, even if users are opting out, right? So that's the CPRA, do not sell or share privacy issue, right? So someone sends a GPC signal, but still you are firing a pixel for Meta or TikTok and sharing data. Surprisingly, in Europe as well, that's still 72%. So that's still very high. And yeah, the last number is just how many privacy issues exist, right? So about 17 US on average privacy issues for CPRA. And in Europe, which we did from UK, is about 23. One last insight just on benchmarking the third-party ecosystem on website. First of all, on an average, about 20-ish 20-ish third parties are present in websites. In US, 17 advertising third parties are there. So think of pixels and trackers. That's the amount of third parties that are integrated into website. In Europe, it's 6. So it's way less in Europe versus US. Kind of also makes sense because how Europe is a little ahead in terms of compliance and user privacy in general. If you look at Google Ads and Facebook Ads, 70% of the websites have those integrations, right? And we've seen all these pixel fines and data leaks which are happening because they are misconfigured or they fire early or they end up taking up sensitive data. And another thing which we observed was 78% website had a tag manager. So think of tag manager as a powerful tool for your marketing team where they don't need to go through any change management and can switch on and off marketing pixels trackers from that platform, and those trackers start to appear on your website. So we feel these are some moving parts or your third party ecosystem on websites that could lead to some privacy risk. High number of advertising partners, high usage of Google tag managers and other tag managers, very little visibility for privacy teams. So all the work which is done on putting a consent banner goes in waste because someone actually changes a parameter and does not inform the consent team or the privacy team. And that's why we have such high level of non-compliance. So I'm going to post a link, or someone from my team will post a link to the report on the chat. Feel free to take that up and download and share these insights internally. If you would like a free consent test of your website, we have that available on Privado as well. Feel free to, we'll drop a link. Someone from my team will drop a link to that, and you can also look at that and request a free report. With that, I'm going to move to the fun topic, which is mobile app privacy and SDKs especially. So first of all, why the focus, right? Like what's really changing? So if you look at the regulatory or enforcement trends or guidance, what's happening on both sides of the world, US and Europe, this is kind of not new. In fact, like if you look at right from 2021, the FTC has been either giving guidance about mobile app location data, SDKs, or they refer it in their fines, right? So I think I read either it was Monument or there was some other fine where they had specifically mentioned SDKs. I recently read I think it was the Danish TPA where they had mentioned SDKs, APIs, JavaScript. So that's kind of like something we've seen on the enforcement side where they're actually auditing your mobile apps as well. SEPA, I think this has been interesting. Like it was very focused on website, but we've seen this move to mobile app as well. We'll look at it as an example in the next slide, but yeah, they're now looking at mobile app SDKs as trackers and the automatic data collection as, invasion. I know SEPA in general is getting a pushback on the litigation side, but from a privacy perspective, it does make for news and, doesn't look good for the brand and user trust as well. So then CPRA, of course, CPRA does cover your mobile app as well. So the do not sell has to be applied there as well. SDKs is a big part there. I felt on European side, there were two documents that came this year, which had mentions of SDKs and mobile app very heavily. One is the new e-privacy directive, which I think a lot of people read and posted recently. There, they actually mention SDKs as a key part through which data can go out and which require consent as well. And then the CNIL mobile app privacy guidance, I think I felt that was pretty exhaustive. And that is where they actually went in very specifically into different players, and SDKs is a key player. And as mobile app developer or company who operates mobile app, you have to have a good SDK governance, what SDKs you have, what data gets to them, apply data minimization, privacy by design, consent, so on and so forth. So from a interesting kind of trend we've seen is, while there was a lot of cookie sweep or website sweep happening earlier, on the mobile side, regulators are getting active as well. And there are technologies, I'm going to show you that today as well, how it's very easy to audit any app, really. Yeah. The next thing what we can look at is some examples of enforcement, right? Like actual fines, non-compliance. So, all the way back, Flow Health, Easy Healthcare, very specific on SDKs collecting data. In fact, in case of Premom, which was basically about adding a SDK, which was kind of a malware or a spy SDK. And, it was taking up all the data. Cerebral is another example. I feel on the US side, SpongeBob app is a good example of that. It is a recent fine. I think it is by the CAAG, and very specifically talks about you need to govern your SDKs, right? And on the SEPA side, it's the Calm case, where I think it's on Twilio, where the segment SDK collecting data has been part of that lawsuit, right? So I don't know how much of that will go through, but the main context is like mobile apps are now being opened more and more by people, and they are actually filing up either these cases or regulators are looking under the hood. So that's something which is very visible to the external world and something that you should have a good hold of. Great. So let's first jump into what SDK governance would mean for a company like yours. And we're going to start with what SDKs are really, right? So first of all, if you think of your mobile app as like something that you're building out of Lego, like a Lego board, right? SDKs are small Legos that are attached by you to build that house, right? It's kind of like a toolbox for engineers. It's like pre-written. It has some business logic already as part of it, right? So instead of let's say if I have to integrate, I have to support payments in US, and either I can write all the code and then finally, call an API of Stripe, or I can say, I'm not going to write all this business logic. Stripe has an SDK. I'm going to make it part of my app and just, say Stripe Pay, and the payment happens. So basically, SDKs make it very easy for developers to collect data for analytics, advertising, payments, any kind of purpose. So while it makes it easy on one hand, for privacy, it makes life difficult, because once you add something which is an external software as part of your mobile app, it also takes some access, right? So it can auto collect data, it can share more data, it can bring its own third parties, all those risks come in, right? So that's what an SDK is really. And from a governance perspective, what you're really trying to do is have a clear visibility on all SDKs. In fact, you should have visibility of all third parties, but SDKs is a big one. And once you have that, what data is actually going in there, which of those require consent, is data minimization happening or not? And again, two parts, SDKs. Once have a good understanding of what SDKs you have, especially focus on advertising SDKs, because they can end up collecting data which could be sensitive, right? So think of, if you are a pharmacy app, if your SDKs are collecting screen names, then it can reveal, hey, Vaibhav actually visited, a drug page, and that can reveal my health condition. Especially on consumer my health map data, that becomes a big problem. It's there on website as well. In mobile app, the problem, it's tough to audit. And then the second thing is, from a governance perspective, what you have to do is like three things, right? So first is, you first know what you don't know, get that visibility. Second is you do the testing. So make sure your banners are working, right? So your SDKs actually honor consent. And finally is monitoring. So making sure if someone adds an SDK, it's coming through your program, it's pre-approved, you have done all the testing, you know what data the SDK is really going to collect, and then you can make it live as well. So we are next going to look at all the privacy risks that these SDKs are bringing in. I know there are some questions. I'm going to take them up as they come. Feel free to keep putting them in the Q&A section as well. So let's look at all the mobile app privacy risks, either what these SDKs bring in or which they inherently are in your mobile app, right? So the first big risk we see is something that your developers control, which is like collection risk, right? Or over collection risk. We've all heard of ride sharing apps using battery to determine price. As a consumer, that becomes an experience which is not is not something you expect, and that becomes like a privacy issue as well. So over collection of data can very well happen in mobile app, especially because it's not deliberate. It happens through, you can just observe from user device. Think of keyboard stroke, contact history, click stream data, ad IDs, device IDs, all of these persistent identifiers, and all of the over collection that can happen brings in the first risk. Of course, if you are dealing with an app which has children data, then that also becomes a big risk, especially if you are tying that with persistent identifiers. If you have location data being collected, that's a big risk as well. So there are things that deliberately your engineers or your product team is building the app and doing, which is under your control. That's the first party collection. Those are the risks there. The second kind of risk that we see is the third party risk, which is very closely tied to these SDKs. So if you add an SDK, I think the number one risk that we see is auto data collection. Auto data collection means you add an SDK, the SDK's documentation is not clear. You really do not know what data they're going to collect, and they just, collect the location history sometimes. Of course, they'll collect all the identifiers, device model, Wi-Fi name, OS name, then the pages, the page refers, screen visited, and all of that can lead to sensitive data sharing, right? Some of that could happen. The second big risk we've seen is which is deliberate data sharing, where while the SDK is not collecting data, your product managers wanted to share, event names with analytics provider, and that actually revealed health data. That those cases have been where fines have been levied in the past, and that could very well happen. So that's one category of data sharing risk, sensitive data sharing, which could be happening through these SDKs, either automatically or by accidentally, or engineers end up sending oversharing data. The second big risk we see is insufficient consent, right? Where you've put in a consent banner, but the SDKs do not honor that consent. They either get fired early, the right consent signals are not passed, or in some cases, it's like a Google Tag Manager situation where someone switches off, switches on another SDK, and that gets added without it going through your review cycle. So insufficient consent is another big problem or privacy risk, especially when you start to add SDKs in your mobile app. The third we've seen is children data sharing. This is especially like if you have added an age gate and you did the initial testing and everything was fine, but later someone adds more SDKs, do not inform you, and that age gate stops to work. So that has been like in the past where privacy issues have been reported, companies have been fined. So that's another big area we see. Especially for companies who monetize their apps and have ads on their app, there are all these ad publishers or all these ad SDKs which get added, which can add their own fourth parties, which sometimes do not honor consent, and data leaks happen. So that's like especially becomes complex when you start to go on the ad side. So overall, like what we see, if you look at mobile app as a general category, there are some risks that are generated just by the nature of either you end up collecting more data or deliberately sharing more data. And then the second big risk is SDKs and the fact that they collect data automatically. They need to be configured right to honor consent, and they bring in more fourth parties that you have no visibility on. So that's kind of the problem area that we're dealing with when we look at SDKs. And if you look at like how can privacy team really solve it, uh, so like at Privado, we have like a complete solution around SDKs and how we can solve it. I'm going to jump into it and uh, answer that. I know there's a question around opinion about open source and unlicensed SDKs libraries. So that's a great question. So the open source unlicensed libraries, they bring in security vulnerabilities because it could be hacked through that. There is very little chance that they would be collecting data, but they could. Generally they do not, but the risk on the open source unlicensed libraries is more around security vulnerability. What we've observed is the actual third-party SDKs by Amplitude, Meta, TikTok, Iron Source. This is where your risk is because they will collect actual personal data and you will share data with them. And sometimes you end up sharing more data. So thanks for that question. Uh, okay, this is another one that I saw, which is SDKs versus APIs, and how are they different, and what are the privacy risks, or how is the privacy risk different there? So, I mean, think of again, as I said, SDKs are easier to integrate and less transparent, and you have less control because they can automatically collect data. APIs are takes more effort to integrate in the sense you have to write more code, but you have full control. So from a privacy risk perspective, in SDKs, you could have more risk around automatic data collection. Uh, in APIs, the risk is really known, like because your engineers might send data which could be more data than you need to, and that can be audited. That is your own code. Whereas on the SDK side, the automatic part is completely, again, like a wild, wild west. You don't really know, and something, you need a solution for. Uh, so yeah, how can you solve it, right? So at the end of the day, you can like at Privado, we actually have solutions built into both audit your mobile app, website, overall code. But what Privado does it, we are a privacy code scanning solution. We can scan your code of your mobile app website, or we can run those mobile app and website to do the same if you don't have access to code. And we actually enable three things. We automate your data flow maps right from what data you collect, where you share it, how you use it, where you store it. So that for ROPAs, etc. Then the next thing we enable is we help you make your privacy governance programmatic. So right now, most privacy teams have to rely on assessments to find risk or find issues, and that takes a lot of time. Privado flips the book. We automatically run scans. Think of us as a risk scanning company. We'll scan your user-facing products like app, website, and software to find risk and actually mitigate it. And finally, enablement. We enable your marketing team, your engineers to say, hey, here is a privacy risk. You need to fix it. And your risk actually goes down over time. From a mobile app privacy or SDK governance perspective, this is how Privado can help you. The first thing we really do is when we run a scan on your mobile app, we first of all identify and classify all data that you collect. This could be data through your user forms. This could be data through your app permissions. Any data that your app is collecting, we classify it. We apply tag on sensitivity. Is it GDPR sensitive? Is it health data? Is it HIPAA? All of that. Second, we also discover all third-party integration, SDKs, APIs, trackers, anything. And then finally, we combine all these information to build a data flow graph for you, saying, here is the data that you collect, and here is the data that is going to your ad SDK, so on and so forth. So that's number one. You run a scan with Privado, you get the data flow map for your mobile app websites, in this case, mobile app. The second is consent monitoring. So think of it as privacy testing. You can't really just put a consent banner and hope the consent work. You need to test it. You need to figure out if actually, if a user says do not sell or share my data or rejects your cookie banner on your app, are your SDKs and third parties really honoring that or not? And if they're not, then you need a real, hey, this is the SDK, this is the script which is not honoring, and fix it. So that is possible in Privado. That's automated as well. And then I know there is a question around how Privado does it, and I'm going to answer that as well. The next one is around, again, SDK governance and making it programmatic. There are two problems that happen. One is you need to know what your SDKs are today, what data they collect automatically, what data you're sharing deliberately. That in Privado can happen automatically. You run the scan. The second thing you want to do is whenever someone tries to add a new SDK, you want a collaboration with your engineer and your product team saying, why are you adding this SDK? But the first thing to do that is have alerts. If someone adds an SDK, you need to be alerted, and there needs to be a full uh, mitigation plan around it. So Privado automates that as well. If I add a new SDK, it will create an alert for me as an engineer saying, you need to get it approved from privacy, or you need to do these 5 things before you can add this SDK. That level of control and governance does not exist for privacy teams. Privado automates that. So that those are the 3 things we do. We'll go in and give you your maps. We will test your consent, and finally we will prevent these risks from going live. So you don't have to like keep finding things in your live app and keep fixing them. That's a big pain as well. So before I go in, there is a question around how Privado scans mobile app to build this graph. And do we deploy it on-prem, or do we need a source code? So on the solutioning side, Privado can scan mobile app using 2 ways. One is we scan the source code, which is the actual business logic. That is where you will get to see insights around what data deliberately you're collecting, which is your business logic, and who you're sharing it with deliberately, right? So you've written that code saying, oh, shared this code with Meta, shared this code with Praise, Amplitude. That is what we call an inside scan, which is running on source code. That can be, again, can be deployed on-prem or cloud. We have both flavors. So that's one type of scan. The second type of scan is outside-in scan, where what we will do is we will take your mobile app. The only thing we need is APK, which is freely available on Play Store generally, and we will simulate the user experience. So that is where you can run user journeys and say, I'm going to build a user journey for consent and see if an ad tracker gets fired or not. So in that case, we don't need your source code. And that is where you test for consent, you test for automatic data collection. And I'm going to show you that for Solitaire, a game everyone has played in today's demo as well. So thanks for asking that questions. Again, if there are any more questions, feel free to do that. Now I'm moving to our demonstration, and I'm going to show you what you can do with your mobile app, both when we run a scan on your mobile app code, which is again something that your team has built. So that is, the risk is high because it's deliberate data collection, deliberate data sharing. It's your business doing it. And then the second is when we run it from the outside, like a user journey, the risk is still there, but that is the unknown part. You will never know unless you test it live. So let's look at the Privado results. So I have a whole suite of products I've scanned, but for today's demonstration, I'm going to focus on a health app and show you what all data this health app collects, the SDKs, the data flows, the issues, and what all you can do in Privado. So let's start with this application. It's called Leaky Health App. It's an Android app. As you can see, Privado has predicted it's a mobile app. And the first thing Privado presents you is it gives you the data flow diagram of what is the sharing ecosystem from this app. So this app shares data with 9 vendors. As you can see, Facebook, AppsFlyer, Branch, Criteo, Amplitude, Twilio, Segment, which is the SEPA case, AppLovin, and a few more. So that's kind of the starting point of Privado. Once you go in, we start to show you more insights around the data, again, the same third parties, processing activities, what's the data used for, and also permissions. I feel app permissions is a big risk point for companies because that's where you might have excessive data collection happening, and you want to know your sensitive permission. So this app collects Bluetooth and reads phone state. That is something which is happening. If you want to verify how do we know that, you can just click here. It will show you the actual permission which this app is taking. And everything is linked to a data element as well. Now, once you have this brief insight, you can go into Privado and look at the list of data elements. So this is a list of all the data this mobile app collects, shares, and processes. So starting from the name of data element, the category, the sensitivity, the data flow, all of this information exists in Privado automatically. right? So for example, this app is a health app and it is sharing data with, which is illness or medical condition. As you can see, it is sensitive in all laws. It's also consumer health data, and it's getting shared with some third party, Google Firebase, Google AdMob, Google Ads, right? And that is something which is which is a problematic case. Uh, we can also look at advertising identifier. This is again being shared externally as well. So once we look at all of this as an ecosystem, it's very easy for you as a privacy team to go and say, I want to know what data my app is collecting, and I want to know the data flow diagram, and that is available here automatically. Once you have that, you can also once you have that, you can also like go in and dig deep into all the SDKs that are integrated. For example, these are the SDK list that exist in your app, and that is something that you're deliberately sharing data with, right? So Twilio segment, amplitude, mix panel, and all of this, including Facebook, will create privacy issues saying, hey, this is a problem, you're sharing more data than needed. Uh, and then finally, we take all of this information and create privacy issues from there. So for example, this app, what happened recently was someone added a new SDK called App Loving. As you can see in the issue here, Privado picked it up and said, hey, you're actually not allowed to do that. And created a privacy alert for the privacy teams. And this is something that we picked up. And this is something that now becomes a place where both privacy teams and engineering teams can collaborate and say, uh, here is proof that we know whenever someone adds an SDK, we get an alert and we actually act on it. And not only we act on it, we also have like easy way for engineers to follow your guidance. So you can attach like a checklist saying, hey, whenever you add an SDK, do these 4 or 5 things, sign a contract, make sure we have DSAR, make sure all these things are there. So that's one. This is the traditional view. If you've seen Privado's demo earlier, you might have seen this in the past as well. You get a full list of all the SDKs integrated with categorization. So you can audit. This becomes a proof for your regulators and such. So this is the traditional view, which is we take your application, scan the code, and build this graph. The alternative view where you have SDKs and that data collection is happening automatically is also available in Privado. This is the part where you can actually test the app automatically. I'll take an example for that. So let's start with the app I'm really picking is an app by Microsoft, a game by Microsoft. It's called Solitaire. And I'm just uploading the APK. And what we're going to do is live, test this. And of course, I have results from the previous scan, so we don't have to wait. But I'm going to show you what you can do as privacy teams in Privado today. While this app is uploading, there was a question around, will we be able to give us the snippets in case we provide an APK? Yes, and I'm going to show you the proof that you get in case of APK as well. So let's finish this. Okay, so now the app is live. What we're going to do is show you how you can test your mobile app in Privado. So I uploaded the APK. These APKs are available in your company. As you see the app open in a nice screen, it's by Microsoft. It's the Solitaire game. Everyone has played this game in offices. At least I have played it a lot. And then what I'm going to do is just become like a user and say, hey, I'm going to play some game. And all I want to do at the end of this game is see what happened, what SDKs got fired, what trackers got fired, what are the permissions, right? So yeah, I can pick a game and say, okay, here's a solitaire game, and try to start playing it and say, okay, does this go anywhere? I need some hint, uh, you know, and then maybe cross this game, play some other game, keep doing that. Like, your user's journey on app and which could be problematic. So if you are a health app and you're taking health information, maybe you want to simulate that. If you are a children app, you want to simulate your age gating experience. If you're an e-commerce app, maybe you want to simulate your payment experience. Does not matter. You can run any journey like this in Privado. And at the end of it, once it finishes, you just say stop or save, and then we will produce a result for you, right? Um, So I'm going to stop this and go back to the results which already exist. So first of all, this is what you would get out of Privado. So first of all, it will discover all third parties that got fired in our test. I did a similar test in the past, and this is kind of what we got. Some expected calls. Of course, Microsoft, so it's making call to Xbox. That makes sense. It's making call to some ad partners, Liftoff, Taboola, Singular Marketing Partner. These are all the actual calls which are being made. And then very easy to investigate, okay, what data is being shared. You can really see here and say, okay, it shared some unique IDs. This is device and Android ID, ad ID. Um, and then you can see, language is being shared, device info is being shared. So all this data is going to this partner of yours automatically, as I play the app. You can also look at this. This is, I think, Microsoft Ads, and you can see the device info being shared, and you can really dig deep and audit into what is really happening. Right, so that's a list of all third-party calls. There are some Facebook calls being made. There is, of course, we said Taboola, so that's another ad partner. Liftoff, another ad partner. So these are all third-party calls that were being fired as we played and tested this game. And that's kind of the uniqueness of Privado. Privado can do both for you. It can, on the code scanning side, scan your mobile app from inside and say, here are risks that your uh, team has bring in because they have written code which is oversharing data, or you did not know about a certain third party and you want to figure out what's my risk when I'm sharing data. Do I know what data I'm sharing? You get that answer very, very fast here. The second is where you want to actually test, is your consent working? Is your child gate working? Are you sharing more data? What are the data these SDKs are collecting automatically that you do not know of? Their documentation is generally not up to date. So by combining these two, you can actually get a full picture of data you collect from your mobile apps, the third-party ecosystem, all the privacy issues, and test your key user journeys if your consent is working, if your age gate is working, or if you're sharing sensitive data externally or not. So that's a quick demonstration of the Privado platform and how we can help. I know we are down towards the last 20 minutes and there are a bunch of questions I saw, so I'm going to do that and answer as well. So the question is, will the scans be done on the most recent version? Alternatives we have looked. Which doesn't work for the. Yes, absolutely. Like this app you saw on Microsoft, like Solitaire app, I actually downloaded this morning. So this is what's live on Play Store for them, right? So yeah, again, and as I said, like what we are doing, like some of the regulators are able to do, some of them are not able to do, but like as a privacy team, you should be testing your mobile apps, right? And you should be testing them from source code. You should be testing them. If not from there, you can start it on an easier way from your APKs, and it will test from the most recent version of your iOS and Android app. We can also do CTV, we can do anything. So yeah, all of that is possible. Let me finish that. Okay, there is another question on if we can test for ATT type of consent. Yes, we can. So think of if the device signals also Privado can test for, so that's possible as well. Another question I see is around location data. And the question is like if Privado will be able to figure out uh, precise versus what's the question? Lat long going or not? Yes. So yeah, in this case, the app didn't really take any permissions around location, but we have seen and we have tested apps which do take precise location. We're working with some e-commerce gaming companies where they are able to see location data going externally. They have fixed that issue as well. So that's possible too. All right. Okay. I see one last question. And then, yeah, if there are any more questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A panel. I'll take them up. Yeah. Yeah, of course, I understand. So yeah, this is basically Android. The device is Pixel 7, which we tested on. So it is on the latest Android. So the question was basically probably some old testing tools the company might have used was on older Android, like Android 7 or something. But yeah, we test on the latest phones, Pixel 7, which is actually Android 15, and then same for iOS. So yeah, latest latest OS, latest device. Like basically, the goal is to replicate what your users are doing on your app. So you want to run the same test, record the same test, run the same test on Privado. So that's what the solution really is doing. Yeah, I'll take the final question around. So the question really is around like, hey, can it basically figure out? The question is little nuance around ads and like if ads have to be loaded and can we figure out if the right signals are being passed or not. So if I have to show that really quickly, um, in Privado, like what we do is we get these we get all these third party calls that we are seeing, and all we are looking for is, for example, in these calls which are being made from third party calls which are being made from the application, if the signals are consent signals are not being passed, like non-personalized ad or opt out or GDPR equal to 1, we will actually create a privacy issue saying this SDK is misconfigured, please fix it. So that is possible in Privado as well. So with that, I think that was the last question I have. I'll wait for another minute. If there are any more questions, happy to answer them. For people who attended, if you want a free scan of your mobile app, feel free to go to Privado.ai and request a demo, and we can send across a free mobile app scan, a free website scan as well. To test an app. Yeah, so that is a question. Yeah, so the question is, thanks again for asking this question. The question is, can you record and then automatically scan? Yes, so every time you record a test in Privado, we save it, and then you can schedule it to be scanned every week or whatever if the APK changes as well. So that's possible. It is already live in Privado. Again, thanks for asking that question. All right, perfect. I see there are no more questions, so we'll end the webinar. Again, if anyone is interested to get a free web scan, mobile app scan, you can go to Privado.ai and request a demo, and we'll send it across your way. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.